Hi, I'm Phil Constantine. This is Travels with Phil, and we're going to Gettysburg National Military Park to look at probably the most famous part of the battle, Pickett's Charge. This is a picture that took place at the scene just a little after, and this is from the National Park Service about the 150th anniversary commemoration. While you watch these pictures, I'm going to read to you the story of Pickett's Charge from Wikipedia. Pickett's Charge was an infantry assault ordered by Confederate General Robert E. Lee against Major General George E. Meade's Union positions on July 3, 1863. It was the last day of the Battle at Gettysburg in the state of Pennsylvania, and it's the American Civil War. Its utility was predicted by the charge's commander, Lieutenant General James Longstreet, and it was arguably an avoidable mistake from which the Southern war effort could never fully recover militarily or psychologically. The furthest point reached by the attack was referred to as the high water mark of the Confederacy. The charge is named after Major General George Pickett, one of three Confederate generals who led the assault under Longstreet. Pickett's Charge was part of Lee's general plan to take Cemetery Hill and the network of roads it commanded. His military secretary, A.L. Long, describes Lee's thinking this way: there was a weak point where the ridge was sloping westward, formed the depression through which the Emmetsville Road passed. Thinking that by forcing the Federal lines at that point and turning towards Cemetery Hill, it would take in the flank and the remainder would be neutralized. Lee determined to attack at that point, and the execution was assigned to General Longstreet. On the night of July 2nd, Meade correctly predicted at his Union Council of War that Lee would attack the center of the lines the following morning, and he beefed the area up. The infantry assault was preceded by a massive artillery bombardment that was meant to soften up the Union defense and silence its artillery, but it was largely ineffective. Approximately 12,500 men in 9 infantry brigades advanced over open fields for 3/4 of a mile under heavy Union artillery and rifle fire. Although some Confederates were able to breach the low stone wall that shielded many of the Union defenders, they could not maintain their hold and were repulsed with over 50% casualties, and it was a decisive defeat that ended the 3-day battle and Lee's campaign in Pennsylvania. Years later, when asked why his charge at Gettysburg failed, Pickett reportedly replied, "I've always thought the Yankees had something to do with it." I appreciate his thoughts as far as that's concerned. You see the reenactors going on here. This was in 2013, the 150th anniversary. There have been several other ones. In 1922, there was one with the U.S. Marines out there reenacting both sides of the battle. Some of the generals involved in this were on the Confederate side were Longstreet, Pickett, Pettigrew, Trimble, Anderson, and Armistead. He was killed there. Union side was Meade, Hancock, Doubleday, Gibbon, Robbins, Hayes, and von Steinwehr. And those are just the major generals that were involved. Lots and lots of other folks out here on both sides, lots of brigades, lots of units from all areas. And so this was the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg. Lots of reenactors go out there, and you'll see actually a couple of folks in some of the later videos out here. Going to show you some maps of the area. The red is the Confederate side, the blue are the Union side, and you can see the various forces that are all coming together. You can see sort of a bend in the blue line there in the middle. That's the spot called the angle. Now, this is where Pickett on the horseback gets his orders from Longstreet, and Longstreet didn't think it was very good. That's Pickett right there. And this is Longstreet coming up in the next picture. Now, during Pickett's charge up there, his forces carried a particular flag, and this was the design of it right here. Now, this may not have been the actual flag that you see here, but this was basically very similar to it. And here's the National Park Service Ranger.
Hi, everyone. Greg Goodell, again from Gettysburg National Military Park. I want to welcome you to the July 3rd edition of the 149th Anniversary Museum Monday series. You've seen in the last 2 days that we've done some things, highlighted some artifacts on the first 2 days of the battle. Now we're on day 3, the famous July 3rd Pickett's Charge. And what you see here is one of the more unique treasures in our collection. And what you see in front of me is actually directly associated with Pickett's Charge and General Pickett himself. This is the field from a second pattern national Confederate flag, also known as the Stainless Banner, that was carried by General Pickett here during the battle. Now, of course, unfortunately for us, we've lost the vast majority of that flag. So if you can just picture this as you would an American flag, and this is where all of the stars are. there would have been much more of this flag originally. It would have all been white. But of course, you can see some of the remnants of it here. But it's been lost over time, most likely either through damage or through souvenir hunters who, souvenir takers from the Union Army who would have captured this flag at the end of the war. It was actually captured in 1865 at the Battle of Five Forks. But what's unique about it is the direct, clear provenance that we have on this flag, and it's a clear association with Pickett's division. So we're very fortunate to be able to have this here at Gettysburg and to be able to show you an artifact that was on the field that fateful day in 1863. So thank you so much, and we will see you tomorrow for the July 4th special edition of Museum Monday.
And the website there is very, very good, and you can go back and check some of those. So let's take a look at the view of the Confederate side in Pickett's charge. This is an old photo. Now this is taken, and you're looking towards Cemetery Ridge at the top. There's lots and lots and lots of informative signs out there. This tells you where Deming's division, all different spots where different units were at, where they took place, how many people they had there. This is the road they had to cross and go over the picket fence. And you got to remember, this is an old school 1800s, 1700s. Line the soldiers up in a straight line and have them march forward. That made their shooting more accurate. So they were marching across an open field out here, and that's why the Union forces were at such an advantage. Travels with Phil continues at Gettysburg. This is the North Carolina Monument. And this is where the charge against Cemetery Ridge started. Part of it. Another part of it is further to the south. The spire that you see in front of you is one of the monuments up there. And just to the left of it, that you can see a bus sort of up there between the little clump of trees. That's where I was yesterday. That's the angle where the Confederates were able to make a inroads across the American Union lines. The same tractor that was plowing up yesterday, and Pickett's charge came from a little bit further over to the right there toward where that tractor is coming through. This is part of where the charge up against Cemetery Hill originated. It's about 3/4 of a mile up to that ridge. Look off to the right, over there is a big round top. To the left of it, Little Round Top. Devil's Den in front of it here, and again, Cemetery Ridge. Right Travels with Phil continues here from Gettysburg. And again, Pickett didn't lead the entire thing. They just named it after him because he was one of the major sides. So let's move over to the Union side, looking toward the Confederates, as the Union side would have seen it. And again, more signs out there tell you all about what's going on, who was where, who was doing what. Good markers out there tell you what some of the distant things are. There's that flag we were talking about a little bit ago. And this is the high water mark right here. This is as far as they got, the Confederacy, and some people feel that after that point it was all downhill for the Confederacy in the Civil War, because they could just continue to lose after that. Now this is a view from Cemetery Ridge, pointing out some of the spots of the angle there to the left of the trees, called the copse of trees, and there are markers all over the place here. Now, this is a video I shot out there, just so windy, as you can tell by that flag out there, that I wasn't able to, you just can't hear the video. This is the one spot, there's a little chink in the wall here, makes a corner, and you can see the Confederate forces came from those trees in the distance, and the Union forces were behind the rock wall that is right there in front of you. And this is this one spot just off to the left of where I'm standing right now, where the Confederates were able to get across the wall. And again, well, as the text here says, the Union forces were all along this. Now, this stretched along for quite some distance. Not the rock wall itself wasn't completely all the way down to Little Round Top, but it went a long way, and Little Round Top and Big Round Top were the end of the Union lines. The other end went into where the city of Gettysburg is. And that right there, that spot where the Confederate flag is, that's where the Confederate forces, some of them, a small amount, were able to get across. General Armistead was made it across, and he was fatally wounded, mortally wounded, right there where you see those. Now, that's Big Round Top at the peak there, and just to the right of that guy with his arms up, that's Little Round Top down there at the end of the row. And then I'll swing around here and show you the rest of the open area. Now, that bus is traveling on the Emmitsburg Road, and there's a fence out there, wooden fence. Well, the Confederates had to climb over that fence, and that just made them even more of an easy target for the sharpshooters on the Union side. The town of Gettysburg is past those trees back there, a little bit of a distance, Culp's Hill, and then that's toward the rest of the Cemetery Ridge, and then back out at the original spot out here. So you can travel all around here. They have good audio tours where you can turn on your radio, rent a cassette. Markers out here for where every unit started, where one ended, the next one began. Now we're looking toward the angle there in the distance. This is some of the cannons out here. There are just cannons all over the place that, if not were from the area, were replicas. This is where from 10 yards they were doing what they call canister shots, which is big shells that are loaded with all kinds of stuff inside, and they would explode and throw out into the forces in front of them. And then finally, this is an actual group of gentlemen that were there on the Union side. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up by clicking on the button below. You're welcome to leave comments below as long as the language is family friendly. And finally, if you'd like to see more of my videos, please subscribe to my channel by clicking the button over on the bottom right-hand corner. Thank you again for watching.